So we're going to continue entering data. We're going to take a look at when you enter text into a cell that's too wide for that column and how it spills over and how we deal with that by introducing AutoFit. And then we're going to take a look at numerical data because Excel handles the numerical data that's too wide for a column a little bit differently than text. And then we're going to change the default width of the columns. And then we're going to look at the row height and how that behaves with text and numerical data. So we're going to start in number 1. We've got 1, 2, 3. We're going to start in 1, where it says the content is too wide. And I'm going to type that in again. The content is too wide, period. Control Enter. So this doesn't fit in column A. It spills over into column B and a little bit into column C. That may not be much of an issue until you try to put something in column B, like I know. Now that's cut off where it's laid over on top of what spilled over into column B from column A. So what we want to do is to widen the column A, to accommodate the content. And we can do that in a number of different ways. We can grab the column, and we know this. We can just slide across and manually adjust it. But there's actually a better way to do it, and that is to use AutoFit. You can engage AutoFit by hovering over the boundary between the two column headers and then double click, and you'll automatically widen that column to accommodate the content that's in the column. So I'm going to copy this into more than one column. Column A is good, but column B and C are not. And I'm going to actually close down column A a little bit, so none of them are okay. We can adjust with AutoFit all three of these columns at the same time by selecting them. And after I do this, I can double click the border between A or B and C, or C and D. It doesn't really matter. And AutoFit will widen all three of those selected columns. In fact, if I click on a blank cell on the worksheet and press Control A, I'll select the entire worksheet, and when I double click any of these borders, I'll AutoFit all of the content on the worksheet. Now I didn't actually want to do that, I just want to show you that you could. So I'm going to Control Z to undo that to bring back the content from 2. So numerical data works a little bit differently. Column F, I've got the default column width. I didn't change the column width. And when I enter a number that spills over into the adjacent column, Control Enter, Excel automatically expands the column width to accommodate that number. But if I've changed the width of the column to anything other than the default, and I'm just going to change it just a tad, and I enter a number that spills over into the adjacent column, Excel displays that number in scientific notation. It didn't expand the width of the column. I can, of course, expand the width of the column manually or double-click to use AutoFit to accommodate that number. So it works a little differently for numbers than it does for text. Text will automatically spill over, the number will be contained within the cell and converted to scientific notation. There are times when you might want to change the default width on the spreadsheet, and you can do that. And I'm going to do that by first selecting the entire spreadsheet in another way other than pressing Control A by clicking on that triangle in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to go to the Cells group, the Format command on the Home tab, left-click Default Width, and I want to change this default width. And what's going to happen is that any column that hasn't been changed since I opened this spreadsheet, either by AutoFit or manually, will be adjusted by this new default column width. And just for fun, I'm going to make it 0. So every single column will be hidden except for the ones that I've changed. So A, B, C, and F were changed by AutoFit. G was changed also by AutoFit. And evidently I changed H and I along the way, setting this up. But every other column on this worksheet, the default column width has now been set to 0, which in effect hides all of the columns. So I'm going to undo that because I need to get to the third group of content on this worksheet. And we're going to talk about row height. The row height works differently. We've got text and we've got numerical content. When I increase the font height by left-clicking that, the row automatically gets taller to accommodate the height of that content. of the text. The same thing happens with numerical content. So in effect, you have AutoFit happening sort of automatically with the row heights, regardless of whether you're dealing with text or numerical data. So that's entering data and AutoFit. We first looked at text content that spilled over into adjacent cells that we can manually adjust the width of the column it rests in to accommodate it, or we can double-click a border between that column and the adjacent column and have AutoFit adjust for us. We can adjust all the selected columns, including all the columns in the workbook. With numerical data, if we haven't adjusted the column either manually or using AutoFit, and we put a number that's too wide for the cell to display it, the column will automatically expand the width to accommodate that number. If we have changed the column width, Excel will convert that number to be displayed in scientific notation. And we can universally change the default column width in all columns that we haven't yet changed the width by either using AutoFit or by manually doing it. And finally, with row heights, the height of the row will expand automatically regardless of whether we're dealing with text data or numerical data.